Have you guys noticed that there's a lot of hopelessness in our world and a lot of feelings of hopelessness? I feel like even young people are really struggling with this. And so we're going to talk about joy. So, joy is different than happiness because happiness is more like experiential with situations. And joy, I would describe that more as a peace, a well being with a little sparkle of life in it. And it's more of a constant, even though it flows, ebbs and flows, but it's more of a constant. So, how is your joy on the scale of 0 to 10 as far as regularly in your life? And we're going to talk about creating and cultivating and what makes up our joy today. So, one of the biggest things I think that affects our joy is our belief system, because our belief system can be really grounding. And it's very interesting because I wrote the Unravel notebook at Amazon, which is a lot of journal prompts to unravel our belief system, because it's very easy for us to have subconscious belief systems that are not serving us and can be really impacting our joy. And so it's really great when we know our belief systems, we choose our belief systems, and they are showing up for us. They're creating joy. So one belief system that I really makes a difference for me is kind of off of a verse. The joy of the Lord is your strength. And I really think that understanding God's source universe and that my belief that he sees us, that he unconditionally loves us, and that he kind of sees us like these little kids about 3 to 5 years old. And even though we make and do dumb things, that he really delights in us. It's funny because in the Old Testament, God is described as slow to anger and abounding of loving kindness. And it's used a lot in the Old Testament, which is interesting because I think a lot of us will read the Old Testament or look at parts of it and we're like, wow, that was a shit show. And it's very difficult for us to see that that's how God is viewed. So for me, it's really helped to read about who Jesus is as far as how did he show up? Because if he's quote unquote God in human flesh, then that's a great example of who God is. And so reading the book of Luke, because there's Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, that's all about Jesus's life. I really like Luke because it was written by a doctor, and I find that interesting. But seeing how he shows up and getting rid of all my presuppositions and religious ideas and just like looking at his life and his heart really helps me to see God in a different way. And I believe that we're here on purpose and not by accident. And those beliefs are really grounding and bring me a lot of joy, knowing that I'm loved by God, I'm seen by God, and I feel like he views all of us that way, that there's no like special child that's performing better. We're all like little kids in a little bit of a mess. We spill on ourselves, all sorts of things. And he delights and loves us. And that's a huge belief that creates joy for me. And I respect everyone's beliefs as far as what creates joy for them. So that's where I'm at with that. But our beliefs, conscious beliefs, are super important and how they function in our lives. Even just other beliefs, not even those grounding beliefs, because our beliefs can limit us or they can expand us. And I love even just real life examples of amazing people because there's so many of them. For example, Gertrude Ederle. This was a long time ago when women weren't even doing sports and women's, were just in the home, and it was a very narrow view of what women could and could not do. And she wanted to swim the English Channel, and no woman had done that. It was 21 miles, and it was a man's world and a man's thing to do, but she had in her heart and a belief that she could do it. So she ended up doing it, and she did it 2 hours faster than the men, which is really amazing. There's a good movie on this called The Young Woman in the Sea. But that's just such an example of how our beliefs can really propel us, or our beliefs can really hinder us. And so it's good to consciously understand and know and choose our beliefs. So the second thing is purpose. Our purpose can really create a lot of joy. We are made for purpose. We are made for this time in this world. You are made for this space in this world. You're not an accident. And I think our heart tells us some of the purposes that we have, whether big or small or whatever we think it is. And I just believe like walking in our purpose. I do think all of our purpose is to share and spread love. And that can be really meaningful in each of our lives. And even just the little seeds of spreading that can make a big impact that sometimes we'll never know. So just being able to give a little bit of love and kindness to people, especially, in this area where there does seem to be a lot of hopelessness can really make a big difference. For example, I am actually probably born more of an introvert and a quiet person. And then in high school, I decided that this wasn't serving me. To be quiet, I was very uncomfortable in social circumstances. And so I kind of flipped the script and chose to be like, okay, I'm going to focus that they're probably feeling the same way I'm feeling. And I'm going to focus on creating more peace and love in their lives and focus on how they're feeling uncomfortable. So I made that more of my priority. And so one of the things I would do in a lot of situations is focus on getting to know someone and, giving them a little love. And so in college, I did this, and there was a, gathering I was with, and I reached out to a gal, a new gal, Heather. Come to find out, she was a pre-med student, very busy. I just thought she seemed like a really neat person. Didn't have much of a conversation, didn't think much about it. And then the funny thing is, in over like 6 years later, she ended up being my doctor. And it was just this funny thing. And she's like, "Do you remember this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I remember. Now that you say that, I remember saying that." She's like, "That was super impactful to me. I was feeling really lonely at the time. I was working a ton. And just you being friendly and nice to me was very impactful." So the point is, we never know how the little love, the little joy can make a difference in people's lives. So understanding our purpose and also just giving the purpose of giving love and kindness to others. So the third one that can really impact our joy is our priorities, because I really believe we're designed to have that relationship with God and Source and that unconditional love from Him first, and then have a beautiful relationship with ourselves and then with others. And the challenge is, kind girls over the overly kind versus before I was empowered kind, is I wasn't very kind to myself. I would say mean things to myself, critical, and I was much kinder to everyone else rather than myself. And so creating kindness for myself and being kind, treating myself with the kindness that I would regularly give others is huge in creating joy, because that's how we're designed. And then also after that, creating healthy relationships with others is super impactful. For example, Harvard did a 20-year study on happiness, and they realized that an unhealthy, toxic relationship is just as unhealthy as smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, well, I can relate to that. I get that. And on the flip side, having healthy relationships in our life can create so much joy and so much happiness in our lives. And so that was a great study that really shows the importance of that. So again, our priorities of God, ourselves, and then others in that order, and then owning our joy, owning that we can create joy. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Happy holidays. I wanted to make your season a little brighter and lighter. And so I'm offering 2 things for free. One is a relaxing meditation, and the other one is the BARF notebook. And that is the system for working through our feelings and our thoughts by barfing them out, sorting them out, and planning them out. Those are both for free on the website at livebrighter.info. So go ahead and go there and pick up your free gift to help support you this holiday season, and live brighter every day. Make it a great day. Later. The fourth one is probably going to be a surprise for a lot of us. And I would say what helps us create joy is to feel our uncomfortable emotions. And that sounds kind of funny, because you're like, you mean to feel sorrow and sadness and grief can actually help create joy and anger? And I would say absolutely. That's part of us being human, is to experience all emotions. And for me, like in my life, I could see how I absolutely would not feel anger. I didn't want to focus on the disappointment and sadness I was going through. And it basically chopped off my joy too. So you chop off one end and resist those feelings, and it chops off the happy end too. And so it really allowed me to just like go through the motions and kind of more of a doldrum. And so feeling our uncomfortable emotions allows us to experience a whole human experience, which has uncomfortable emotions. And we can experience more joy. So that's kind of a funny one. Number 5 is understanding our choice and using it. So choice. And what I mean by that is we have circumstances in life. There's the facts. No one's going to argue with those facts, and those are neutral. And then we have our thoughts about the circumstance. As far as the thoughts about the circumstance is what's going to affect our feelings. And the feelings are what's going to impact our actions, and that's going to affect our results. And so a lot of us will automatically think the feelings we're having is because of the circumstance, but it's actually our thoughts about the circumstance and knowing we have a choice, lots of choices, as far as what those thoughts are and what we want to have. So for example, if I have the thought, there's no opportunity for me to get out of debt, that's going to create feelings of hopelessness and frustration. And the actions is I'm probably going to want to soothe that because it doesn't feel good. So I'm probably going to eat more carbs because that's a really good way to soothe is chips for me. And then I'm probably going to buy some things because that's a good way to soothe for me too. And then the results is I will get more in debt. Like I create it. Versus like I can have a different thought, which is the circumstances I owe $15,000 on my credit card. And instead of the thought, there's no opportunity for me to get out of debt, I'm going to choose a thought that resonates with me, that I can accept. And it's going to be the thought that I can improve on this day by day. And then that thought is not going to have me feel hopeless. It's going to give me some potential. It's going to create a feeling of I can do this. And then that's going to create actions that are like, okay, I can cut costs here, I can do this, I can, however, and the results is that eventually I do get out of debt. So that's the difference between thinking that our thoughts are just our thoughts, but knowing that we have a choice and creating what we want is hugely valuable. I like the example of Dr. Edith Edgar. She was in a concentration camp. She's 98 years old. And what she says in her book is change your mind, change your life. She wrote the book, The Ballerina of Auschwitz. And, there was a time she was 10 years old. They shaved her bald and had her naked and killed her parents. I mean, you could have she felt her feelings. She felt her rage. But she was able to move through that and create thoughts that eventually created healing and created a beautiful life after she got out of there. So very great story. Dr. Edith Edgar is a great example of change your mind, change your life, and knowing that we have choices. So that's number 5. Number 6 is creating joy internally and externally. So internally, we're talking about our brains. And just so we remind ourselves, our brain has the lifeguard part of our brain, and all it cares about is keeping us safe. So the lifeguard just wants to put the life preserver on us and in a baby pool and no water, and all it wants to do is keep it safe, and it thinks it's doing a good job. So what it does is really creates a negativity bias. It's going to think negatively, it's going to project negatively about the future, it's going to give us limiting beliefs, and it's just doing that because it's like, I can keep you small and safe if you believe this. And that's just how our brains work. So we have to choose and practice a positivity bias because what we focus on expands. And so how I've chosen to do that for me personally is that in the morning, when I start my morning with a few songs that just create inspiration in me that I like. And then I also, when I'm doing my journaling, I always do at least 3 gratitudes. And at the end of the day, I talk about or I write about my gold stars, like the good things that came out, the good things that I did, the small encouragement that I'm like, hey, you did a good job in this, or you were able to do that when you normally wouldn't have, just the progress. So that's my gold stars. So doing those things creates a positivity bias and not at the expense of feeling feelings or being honest about what's going on, but it's a great way to create habits that create joy. And so we can create biases internally. Also talking to myself nicely. That's always a big thing. Giving myself grace. That again creates that internal environment of joy. And then our external environment affects our joy too. Each of us are different as far as what feels good to us, what creates joy. And it's fun to do a little experiment on ourselves is what are the little things that create joy? I find that living in the moment and observing just the neat, cool things in life, whether it's like a butterfly that I've never seen before, or, just observing and being there and present, but also adding things to my environment that create joy. Like I love my little betta fish It's a little bright orange betta fish. It was actually my daughter's fish, and she tried to flush it down the toilet because she thought it was dead. And I'm like, I think it's alive, and let's save it. And then I put the little betta fish in a happy area, and I put it by me while I do my work. And the little betta fish is so happy, and it just creates joy in my life. So just things like that, or going like for a walk, being in nature, having a coffee with a friend. There's lots of things that can create joy, and we're all very individual as far as that. Some people I know like to add plants to their life, but really being intentional about like how do I respond to certain things as far as what creates joy, and just kind of watch for that, and we can create that in our own lives. So now let's just take a pause and take a deep breath in, belly breath in, and breathe out slowly. Take one more belly breath in and breathe out slowly. And I want you to think about one thing you could either add to your life or take away from your life that will enhance your joy. And then do it. Follow me on my YouTube channel, Live Brighter with Tara. Make it a great day. I believe in you.